Ash drifted across the ruined valley like a gray ocean, swallowing the shapes of broken machines and the bodies of soldiers who had once believed they were winning. Sergeant Rian Cole blinked through the haze, his visor cracked, the world around him trembling with the echo of distant bombardment. Somewhere above the clouds, the Galactic Federation's retreat shuttles streaked toward orbit, leaving behind the planet they had sworn to liberate. Cole exhaled, tasting iron and dust. He was still alive, barely. His leg throbbed, his ribs felt splintered, and the blood drying on his arm glued the fabric of his uniform to his skin. The comlink on his wrist flashed a dead signal. He pushed himself upright against the shattered husk of a transport skimmer. The metal was still warm, humming faintly with residual energy. He remembered the last order before the retreat. All non-essential units fall back. Human infantry is compromised. The words had cut deeper than shrapnel. Non-essential. That was what he had become to them. Through the cracked lens of his scope, the horizon shimmered. The Tarkhel Dominion was advancing methodically, tall silhouettes wrapped in biosteel armor that pulsed like living muscle. Their voices carried on the wind, grinding, mechanical tones translated through war masks. They moved with the certainty of predators who knew the hunt was theirs. Rian had seen that confidence before, on Earth, during training simulations where humans were always outnumbered. But this time wasn't a simulation. There was no extraction team, no medic drone, no command voice in his ear. Just him and the rifle across his lap, its targeting array flickering like a dying heartbeat. He pulled the bolt back, checking the chamber. 2 rounds left. The plasma cell was nearly dry. He tried to calculate how far he could crawl before blood loss claimed him. Not far. His mind drifted to his squad. Heller, Juno, and Veer, all gone in the first Tarkhel charge. He remembered Veer's voice crackling over comms. They think we're weak because we bleed more. Let's prove them wrong. That had been hours ago, or maybe days. Above him, an explosion cracked the ridge. Dirt rained down. The Federation gunships were gone, but their echo remained, mocking him. He thought he heard laughter through his comms once before they cut out completely. One of the alien officers, a silver-scaled sergeant from Avar Prime, sneering, "Leave the human. Their kind always breaks first." Rian didn't break. He simply stopped being visible. He began to move, dragging himself through mud and burnt soil toward higher ground. Every inch was agony. His muscles trembled, but his mind sharpened with purpose. The planet's air was thin, burning his lungs, but the view from a mountain ridge offered something he hadn't felt in hours: perspective. From here, he could see the Tarkhel columns sweeping through the ravine, their banners glinting in the dim light. Hundreds of them. He watched them for a long time, memorizing their rhythm, the way their commanders moved, where they paused to signal. Patterns. Every army, no matter how advanced, had patterns. The sniper inside him reawakened. He had been trained not to need orders. The Federation might have given up, but he hadn't. He stripped the broken panel from his rifle's scope, rewired its lens using a fragment of Tarkhel tech scavenged from a corpse. The adjustment hummed softly, aligning perfectly. A human fix for an alien weapon. Crude, but it worked. He set his sights on the lead formation. The Tarkhel general stood taller than the rest, his armor lined with crimson veins of power. Rian steadied his breath. He thought about home, about the blue horizon over Nevada, about the voice of his sister telling him humans were born too stubborn to die quietly. His finger brushed the trigger. A single, silent shot cracked through the mountain air. The general's head snapped back. The alien fell, lifeless, before the others realized what had happened. Confusion rippled through the ranks, their formation fracturing for a brief, glorious moment. Rian didn't smile, but something deep inside him stirred. A pulse of defiance stronger than pain. He chambered the next round. He knew they would triangulate the shots soon. He counted seconds, breathing with the wind, letting the storm mask his presence. His hands were slick with blood, his vision tunneling, yet the rifle felt like an extension of his heartbeat. The next shot tore through another officer's chest. A third Tarkhel stumbled backward into the mud. their command net crackling in disarray. Rian rolled behind a rock as plasma fire rained down. The heat scorched his armor, but he didn't retreat. He reloaded the last round, whispering under his breath, "That's for leaving me." The words weren't bitter, they were a promise. Silence fell again over the ridge. The Tarkhel regrouped below, wary now. Their scanners swept the cliffs, but Rian had already shifted positions, crawling toward a new vantage point. His breathing slowed, syncing with the rhythm of the storm. He understood something in that moment. This wasn't about surviving anymore. It was about reminding them that Earth's soldiers, fragile, emotional, painfully human, were still dangerous. Lightning flared across the valley, revealing his silhouette for a split second. Rian ignored it. He stared through his scope at the next target and waited for the perfect breath. Pain blurred the edges of his sight, but his hands were steady. The rifle hummed softly in the rain. One more shot, he thought. That's all I need. He fired. The bolt flew true, cutting through wind and mist. Another Tarkhel fell. The rest hesitated, scanning for ghosts. Rian pressed his back against the cold stone, letting the rifle rest across his knees. His body trembled with exhaustion, but the fire in his chest refused to dim. "They'll come," he muttered. "They always do." He looked toward the darkening sky, where faint trails of retreating ships glimmered like falling stars. The Federation had left him for dead. Yet somewhere out there, in those ships, were the same soldiers who once mocked Earth's fragility. They would hear what he had done. They would know that one human hadn't surrendered. He smiled faintly through cracked lips and whispered into the storm, "You left one soldier. One's enough." The wind carried his voice down into the valley, mingling with the thunder of distant footsteps. The battle wasn't over. Not yet. Dawn bled slowly across the sky, painting the jagged mountains in a dull red light. Rian Cole sat beneath a splintered ridge, his back pressed against stone slick with morning dew. The world smelled of burnt metal and ozone. He had not slept, not truly. His body moved on instinct now, reload, check scope, reposition, breathe. Pain had become his rhythm, and the silence his companion. Down in the valley, the Tarkhel Dominion moved differently today. They no longer advanced in confidence. They searched. They feared the ghost that hunted them. He adjusted the lens on his rifle, its surface streaked with mud. Through the scope, he counted 12 soldiers sweeping the perimeter near a wrecked transport, scanning heat signatures. They were learning, adapting, but still too slow. Humans had invented patience long before the galaxy learned war. He steadied his aim, aligned the reticle over the squad leader's throat, and exhaled. The rifle purred softly. The alien dropped, motionless, before his team understood the sound. 2 more followed in quick precision, their armor collapsing under invisible force. Rian shifted positions before the echoes reached him. He crawled through the narrow ledge above the valley, moving like part of the terrain. Every breath burned his chest, but he ignored it. The wound in his side had sealed unevenly, the skin raw and swollen. He had learned to ration pain, acknowledge it, then set it aside. His father once told him that humans survived not because they were strong, but because they refused to understand when to quit. That memory felt distant, but it steadied him. Below, the Tarkhel began shouting into their comms, their guttural voices vibrating against the rock. They fired blindly into the cliffs, plasma bolts cutting through the mist, illuminating nothing. Rian watched them exhaust their energy cells. Every wasted shot was time gained. He whispered to himself, marking their reload intervals, calculating how many minutes before they regrouped. Then a flicker of movement caught his eye, an officer pointing toward the mountainside, giving orders. They were triangulating. Clever. They'd learned his range. He withdrew behind a fallen satellite dish, scavenged from an abandoned Federation relay. The metal was scorched but functional enough to bounce weak frequencies. He rerouted its signal core, patching into a short-range Tarkhel communication band. Static filled his helmet, followed by sharp, metallic syllables. It was enough to track their command frequency. He began to map their command structure, tracing call signs, voices, tone. The alien leading the operation called himself Commander Zurin, efficient and cold. Rian noted the confidence in his voice and smiled faintly. Every confident commander had a weakness, certainty. Hours passed as Rian watched their patterns evolve. The Tarkhel spread thinner, trying to surround him. He made them pay for every meter. A single shot through a sensor drone, another through a medic unit. Every death sowed confusion. Rumors spread among the alien ranks about a spectral killer who could not die. They called him the Phantom of the Ridge. Rian didn't care about names. He only cared that they stayed afraid. As the second day waned, storm clouds gathered again, rolling like bruises across the sky. The wind carried the metallic scent of rain and burned ozone. Rian crouched beside his rifle, wrapping a makeshift cover around the muzzle to muffle the echo. He listened to the rain start, a soft hiss like static. Perfect cover. Through the scope, he spotted Zurin himself, flanked by guards, inspecting fallen troops. The commander barked orders, his armor reflecting the lightning's flash. Rian felt the pulse of his heart slow, steady. The distance was far, too far for the rifle's stability, but he would try. He adjusted wind, humidity, angle. The breath before a shot was always the quietest sound in the universe. He fired. The shot missed by a fraction, grazing Zurin's shoulder. The commander recoiled, but did not fall. Rian cursed silently. The aliens swarmed the impact zone, firing upward in retaliation. He slipped into a tunnel carved by old bombardments, the rock walls echoing with alien roars. He could hear their footsteps now, heavier, closer. They were coming for him in force. Inside the tunnel, the darkness was near absolute. Rian reloaded, each motion deliberate. He could feel the tremor in his fingers, but forced them still. He placed a proximity mine at the tunnel's mouth, one of the few devices he'd salvaged from the fallen Federation outpost, and moved deeper inside. The light of the surface faded behind him. He crouched beside a broken drone husk, its screen flickering faintly. The reflection on the metal showed a face barely recognizable, dirt-streaked, hollow-eyed, alive only because of stubborn defiance. Static crackled suddenly in his helmet. A faint transmission broke through the interference, distant but human. Any survivors respond. His chest tightened. He adjusted the frequency, boosting signal strength. This is Sergeant Rian Cole. Position grid F9. Still active. Silence. Then another voice, alien this time, intercepted on the same band. Signal traced. Terminate. He froze. They had baited him. His pulse surged. He grabbed his rifle and bolted down the tunnel, boots slipping on wet stone. The explosion erupted behind him, the mine detonating as Tarkhel forces entered. The shock wave slammed him forward, throwing him into a wall. His ears rang. He forced himself up, limping toward the exit that opened onto the northern ridge. Smoke rose from the tunnel, and for a moment, he allowed himself the smallest satisfaction. He reached the ridge's edge and looked out over the valley again. Fires burned where alien camps had once stood. Their formations were collapsing into disarray. Through the static, a different transmission flickered, this time clear and sharp. Unidentified sniper. Your location shows human biosignature. Are you Federation? He hesitated. The same Federation that left him. Still, he pressed the comm. Still fighting, he said. Don't waste your time sending backup. He cut the transmission and turned back to the rifle. The rain had thickened into a downpour, masking all sound. Below, the Tarkhel reorganized, shifting their lines toward the mountains. They would come again, stronger, angrier. Rian tightened his grip on the weapon, ignoring the ache in his body. His reflection in the rifle's scope stared back, a ghost forged from fire and stubborn will. He whispered to the storm, "Let them come." Lightning answered him, bright and merciless, casting his shadow across the ridge like the figure of something eternal. The hunt wasn't finished. Not until every Tarkhel in that valley learned to fear the silence. The third night came without stars. Smoke blanketed the heavens, turning the sky into a ceiling of ash. Rian Cole crouched in the hollow of the ridge, his armor streaked with mud and dried blood. The storm had passed, leaving behind a silence so deep it pressed against his ears. Below him, the Tarkhel encampment burned with the glow of 100 fires, spreading like veins of molten light through the valley. They were rallying for one last push. He could feel it in the ground, a low, rhythmic vibration that grew stronger with every passing hour. The Dominion was done hunting shadows. Now, they meant to erase them. He checked his rifle, cleaning the barrel with a strip of cloth torn from his sleeve. The weapon was more scar than steel now, patched together with alien fragments and Earth-made stubbornness. Each scratch along its frame told a piece of his story. He thought of what the Federation might say if they saw him now. A human soldier, half dead, fighting alone on a planet no one cared to name. Maybe they would call him reckless or desperate, but he wasn't fighting for their approval. He was fighting because someone had to remind the galaxy that humans didn't vanish quietly. Through his scope, he spotted movement. Rows of Tarkhel infantry marching in perfect formation, their armor pulsing with synchronized light. Drones hovered above them, scanning for heat signatures, while artillery crawlers moved into position. They were building a trap meant for an army, not a single man. Rian almost laughed. The irony steadied him. He leaned back against the stone and exhaled, letting the rhythm of his breath match the tremors of the ground. He had a plan, crude but effective, drawn from instinct and exhaustion. During the brief lull after the last storm, he had salvaged power cores from wrecked drones and buried them along the narrow pass leading into the mountains. Each one was wired to a manual detonator hidden beside his rifle position. When the Tarkhel advanced, their weight would trigger the cascade. It wouldn't destroy them all, but it would cripple their command center and scatter their ranks. That was enough. He adjusted the detonator's timing and checked his ammunition. 4 rounds, each one marked with a small scratch near the casing. He touched them like talismans. For Juno, he whispered. For Veer. For everyone you thought didn't matter. His voice trembled, but not from fear. It was resolve carved from everything he had lost. The first wave began at dawn. The Tarkhel came in silence, their movements eerily coordinated, climbing the ridge with magnetic boots that clicked against stone. Rian waited until they crossed the second marker he had etched into the ground. Then he fired. The first shot pierced the lead soldier's visor. The second found the throat of the officer behind him. The formation faltered, confusion rippling through their ranks. Rian fired again, the recoil slamming into his shoulder. He ignored the pain. Plasma bolts screamed through the air, scorching the rocks around him. He crawled to a secondary position, dragging the detonator wire behind him. The aliens were close now, their weapons lighting up the ridge in bursts of blue fire. One beam grazed his side, the searing pain sending sparks through his vision. He gritted his teeth, pressed the detonator, and the world erupted. The ground split open as the buried power cores ignited in a chain reaction, hurling debris and flame into the air. The shockwave knocked him backward, slamming him against the cliffside. He coughed, choking on dust and smoke, but forced his eyes open. Below, chaos reigned. The Tarkhel formation was broken, their disciplined lines reduced to scattered, panicked figures. He pulled himself upright, every muscle screaming, and lined up his final shot. Through the flickering haze, he saw Commander Zurin emerge from the smoke, armor cracked, sword drawn. The alien roared orders to regroup. Rian steadied the rifle against a rock, his hands trembling. The scope's reticle hovered over the commander's chest. He thought about all the times humans have been dismissed, too emotional, too primitive, too fragile. He let the anger focus him. "This is for Earth," he whispered. He pulled the trigger. The round struck true. Zurin staggered, fell to his knees, then collapsed face first into the ash. For a moment, there was only silence. Then the alien army faltered completely, retreating in disarray, their chain of command severed. Rian slumped beside his rifle, the adrenaline draining from his body. His vision blurred. He could barely feel his hands. The ridge around him burned like a pyre, heat waves bending the air. Somewhere above, the clouds broke, revealing a single sliver of sky, a fragment of blue he hadn't seen since leaving Earth. He activated his comm, unsure if anyone would hear. Static answered first, then a faint voice. "This is Federation Command." Signal confirmed. "Identify." He hesitated, listening to the echo of his own breath. "Sergeant Rian Cole," he said. "Mission complete. Area secure." The voice crackled again. "Acknowledged, Sergeant. Evac en route. Hold position." He laughed softly. "Negative," he replied. "Don't waste your fuel. Ridge won't hold." His tone carried no bitterness, only calm certainty. He leaned back, closing his eyes. "Tell them Earth still fights." The transmission cut out. Around him, the wind howled through the shattered rocks, carrying the scent of ozone and victory. His grip loosened on the rifle, and it slid to the ground beside him. The weapon's surface caught the faint morning light, revealing a small engraving along the barrel, for those who said we couldn't. Hours later, when the Federation recovery team landed, the ridge was silent. They found only the remnants of battle, scorched earth, melted armor, and the rifle resting against a stone. One of the soldiers knelt, brushing dust from the inscription. No body, no helmet, just the empty echo of defiance that lingered in the air like a promise. In orbit, reports spread across the fleet. One human sniper had halted a Tarkhel offensive single-handedly. Some called it impossible, others called it myth. But the story traveled quickly, whispered in every barracks and hangar. A wounded man from Forgotten Planet had turned the tide with nothing but his will and his weapon. And somewhere beyond that charred horizon, the wind carried his last words, faint but unyielding. "You left one soldier. One's enough."